Готово. All right. So, hello everyone. So first, let's start with a bit of a sound check, right? So please let me know into the chat box. Type if you can hear me and see me well, if everything works properly, so that we can begin. Because it's important that everything works properly. Is everything right with the connection? All right. Okay, so while you are informing me that it's working fine, let me just start with a brief introduction, right? So you have covered the first stage of the course. So now you're in the second stage of your course. And today, obviously, we are focusing on listening and reading, which are in general more sort of practice parts, right? So in the first stage, you've learned all the necessary skills for all types of questions that you can potentially encounter on this exam. And so in the second stage, we focus on practicing, right? So we take practice tasks from exam materials, right? And see what kind of challenges are there. At the same time, we are revising the information we've learned in the first stage, right? But based on sort of more complete test tasks, right? So it can be sometimes a bit challenging, but obviously with practice, right, everything becomes simpler as we progress, right? So hopefully the challenges that we'll face will not intimidate you, right? We will just learn from our mistakes and obviously avoid these mistakes in the future. Now, today we'll revise a few types of questions, both for reading and listening. So it will be crucial to remember that every type of question and how we answer it depends on and heavily bases on the strategies that you have learned, as I said already in the first stage, right? So let's quickly recap. Focusing on reading, there are 4 key essential skills that you need to possess. First of all, there are 2 techniques, right? Skimming and scanning. Now, skimming, right? Skimming is used when we need to get the gist of a text or a paragraph of the text, for example, right? So skimming means reading the text or a paragraph quickly, skipping unimportant information to get the overall idea. Now, the second technique, the second strategy is called scanning. This one is used when you need to get some specific information in the text. You need to find a word, a name, a date, right? Some specific piece of information. And so when we scan the text, we have some idea in mind, right? We have an understanding of what we need to find in the text. So we don't read it, we run our eyes through the text to find that essential piece of information that we need, right? So 2 techniques, skimming and scanning. And then as kind of additional subordinate skills, we also have identifying keywords, which is always important, right? And of course, paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is the key skill throughout all 4 parts of IELTS. So definitely we are going to heavily rely on it. So once again, skimming, scanning, identifying keywords, and paraphrasing. Now, the first type of question that we are going to revise today, so we'll do a bit of exam practice, will be actually matching headings, right? So this task means that you have a text divided into sections, right? Paragraphs, if you will. And sections are marked with letters A, B, C, D, and so on and so forth. As well as that, you have a list of headings marked with numbers. And so your task in this case, obviously, will be to match the headings that you have with paragraphs of the text. Now, before we dive in, before we get to revising the strategy, I would be interested to hear from you guys because you have learned it in the first stage. So I just wanted to check back with you. So which of the two techniques, skimming or scanning, will we use doing matching headings? Will it be skimming that we'll rely on doing matching headings, or will it be scanning predominantly? So what do you guys think? Type your answers into the chat box, of course. So will it be skimming that we'll use for matching headings, or will it be scanning? All right. So, well, when we do matching headings, right, as I said before, we need to pick a heading for a paragraph, right? And heading is something that should encapsulate the overall meaning of the entire paragraph, right? So we need to get the general idea. And the strategy that helps us do that would be skimming, right? To get the general idea of the paragraph. But more precisely, let's have a look at the steps that you need to take, right? So first of all, again, as I said, we don't need to read the entire thing to understand the general meaning of the text. So I did say that skimming involves skipping unnecessary information. When you deal with a paragraph in a text, the most essential parts of the paragraph will be the first and the last sentences of the paragraph because they carry the most meaning. So in order to start, right, the first step for us will be to read the first and the last sentence of the paragraph that we need to match with the heading, right? Having read those two sentences, we will understand the gist of the paragraph, right? So it will help us to sort of see what is the general idea of that paragraph. Next, once we've done that, once we have already some idea of what this paragraph is about, we can review the headings, right? So we can have a look, go through the list of headings, and choose the one that kind of depicts that general idea. Now, sometimes we may see that maybe there are a few headings that fit this general idea that we got from the first step, right? It's okay at this point. It's totally fine if you have two potential choices, right? Because in the next step, we will learn how to focus on the right answer. But if you have two potential answers, right, two potential headings that might fit, what you should do, you should underline the keywords in those selected headings, right? Because you will need it for the next step. The next step, step 3, is confirming your choice through those keywords that you have underlined. So you look at the paragraph, you read the first and the last sentence, you have had a look at the list of headings, and you think there are two potential options. You've underlined the keywords in them. So in the next step, you will focus on those keywords and try to kind of skim through the middle of the paragraph, trying to find those keywords, their synonyms, or words related to those keywords that you have in those two options, because this will help you to focus on the correct answer, right? So you can sort of validate your choice through this extra step. It's not always necessary. Sometimes, having read the first and the last sentence, you already can pick a very clear option to start. But If it kind of gets a bit tricky, right, then definitely you can focus on that third step to confirm your choice, to make sure that the choice is right. So once again, first, read the first and the last sentence of the paragraph. Then have a look at the list of headings and see if the idea of those two sentences matches with some of the headings on the list. And when in doubt, step number 3, focus on the keywords in the options that you think may fit to the paragraph and try to find those keywords or words related to those keywords in the paragraph, right? And thus sort of making the choice towards one of the headings. So these are the steps that we need to take. Now, matching headings is one of the trickiest types of questions that you can potentially get, because a mistake in one paragraph may lead to a chain reaction with other paragraphs of the text. So we have to be extremely careful completing this one. So let's get into practice, let's get to it, right? And have a look at the first paragraph and try to do it together, right? So following the steps that we have discussed here. So here we're looking at the first paragraph. We can see it's the first paragraph because it's marked with the letter A of the text, which is called the Hollywood film industry, the Hollywood film industry. And here we have this first paragraph. On the right, we have a list of headings that we will choose from, right? Now, you can see there are 8 headings. And I will tell you now, there are 6 paragraphs in this text, right? So 6 paragraphs, but 8 headings. So more headings than we actually need. That is because, again, you remember from the first stage, there are some distractors, additional options that are incorrect, but added to sort of mislead you a little bit, to make the choice for you a bit more difficult. Now, anyways, right, having discussed the steps, let's go with the first one. So the first step for us, guys, is to read the first and the last sentence of this paragraph and try to understand what is the general idea of this paragraph based on these 2 sentences. So the first one, this chapter examines the golden age of the Hollywood film studio system and explores how a particular kind of filmmaking developed during this period in US film history, right? So this is the first sentence. So this chapter examines the golden age of the Hollywood film studio system. And the last sentence, it might in fact be intriguing to examine which changes occurred during the growth of Hollywood studio and compare those changes to contemporary struggles in which production companies are trying to define and control emerging industries such as online film and interactive television, right? So from these 2 sentences, right, the first sentence especially is telling a lot. We can assume, right, because it says this chapter examines the golden age of the Hollywood film studio system, we can assume that the paragraph will be about the golden age, right? Now, if we look at the list of headings, we have 2 potential options here, right, that are talking about golden age. Clearly, it's number 4, the value of starting Hollywood's golden age, and number 8, the last one, the top movies of Hollywood golden age, right? So we have 2 potential choices at this point. Now, the next step for us, since we have 2 potential choices, we're not sure yet whether it's going to be 4 or 8, would be to focus on the keywords in those headings, the keywords that make those headings different from one another. So, number 4, right? The value of starting golden age. So, value of starting golden age. So it's about value of starting of that particular moment in time of Hollywood's history. And number 8, top movies of golden age, right? So number 4, value of starting. Number 8, top movies of golden age. So then you Have a look back at the paragraph, right? And make your choice. Is it about the value of studying of that moment in time, golden age, or is it about top movies of golden age, right? So now at this point, I will ask you guys to make a decision, right? So have a look. Does the paragraph speak more about studying golden age, the value of it, the importance of knowing about golden age, or does it speak about top movies, the most popular films made at that time, golden age of Hollywood, right? So that's our choice that we have to make at this point. So please type into the chat box, what do you think is the right answer here? So is it number 4 or is it number 8? All right. So now here the choice is more or less obvious, I would say, right? Looking at number 8, the top movies of golden age, that means that in this paragraph there should be some movie names mentioned, right? We're not only looking for the word movie, right? But if we assume the paragraph is about top movies, then we expect that some movie names will be mentioned. And if we kind of scan the paragraph, we will not find any names mentioned in there. So clearly here, we have to go for number 4, right? The value of studying Hollywood's golden age, right? Because indeed, in the middle of the paragraph, we can find something related to value of study, right? Inspecting the growth of the studio system may offer clues, right? So it tells us what is the value. It offers clues regarding the kinds of struggles that accompany the growth of any new medium, right? So that, yeah, in this case, we choose option 4. It's very clear cut, it's very obvious, it's number 4, so we can cross it off the list and get to the next paragraph, right? Because this heading will not be used again, right? It can only be used once. So now let's do the same, but for the next paragraph, for paragraph B, right? This one is a bit bigger, but the approach is all the same. So again, we first need to read the first and the last sentence of the paragraph and then see if we can find anything related to the general idea presented in those 2 sentences, okay? So the first sentence is rather short. It says, the shift of the industry away from silent films began during the late 20s, right? So the shift of the industry away from silent films began during the late 1920s. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure you know that movies were silent at the very beginning, right? Because they didn't have, I guess, the equipment to make them, with sound. So they were silent. So the shift of industry from those silent movies began in the late 20s. And then the last sentence, the camera now had to be encased in a big, clumsy, unmovable, soundproof box. In addition, actors struggled having to direct their speech to awkwardly hidden microphones in huge plants, telephones, or even costumes, right? So at the beginning, they told us that the shift started from silent films to actually sounded films in 1920s. And at the end, they say that the camera now, right, with that shift, had to be encased in this soundproof box and microphones were hidden in some awkward locations, right? So now we have 7 headings left because number 4 we have completed already. So now we need to see which of these headings closely reflects this idea. So there is a shift from silent movies to voiced movies. There are some challenges with that, as we can see in the last sentence. So which heading depicts this idea best? Okay. Yeah. So here, guys, right? We focus on the change, right? Because the beginning of the paragraph tells us about the shift. From the end of the paragraph, we find out that it required some further changes, right? Like technical changes, putting the camera in a special box, hiding microphones, right? So from the list of headings here, definitely number 2 is the closest to it, right? So the movie industry adapts to innovation, right? Again, if we focus on the keywords there, right, adapting to innovation, we can find some further confirmation in the middle of the paragraph with those keywords, right? Adapt and innovation. So studios had now had proof that Turkey's film would make them money, but the financial investment made the studios hesitant to invest at first, right? So they were hesitant, but it persuaded studios that talkies were worth investing in. So we can see changes, right? Some shifts, how they needed to adapt to it, right? So that leads us to number 2. As for the rest of the headings here on the list, I'm not sure if anything else fits it, right? Because I don't think any other heading actually makes sense here. So definitely we go for number 2. Okay, that's great. So now let's move on to the next one. So paragraph C. Again, same approach. So number 2, since we've used it in paragraph B, we cross it off the list. Although, guys, sometimes it may be sensible to not cross something entirely off the list in case maybe you later find out that there is a mistake or something doesn't feel right. And if you cross all the options as you go completely, then it may kind of make you hesitant to add some changes to your answers, right? So we cross it off because we are definite that it's number 2, but in case if you're not sure, you should proceed, right? You should keep doing the task and then return to it. But anyways, with paragraph C, again, same absolute approach, the beginning and the ending. So first sentence, vertical integration is the other key component in the rise of the Hollywood studio system. Vertical integration is the other key component in the rise of the Hollywood studio system. And the last sentence, together, these 8 companies operated as a mature oligopoly, essentially running the entire market. Right? So vertical integration is the key in the rise of Hollywood studio system. And at the end, together, these 8 companies operated as a mature oligopoly, right? So these 8 companies. So if they say these, it means that they have been mentioned, right? Because it's a reference to something that has been mentioned before. So we can assume that the middle of the paragraph, which we haven't read, talks about 8 companies, 8 major companies operating Hollywood studio system, running the entire market, as it says here, right? So let's see, what do we have in the list of headings left here, right? So number 1, the power within each studio. Number 3, contrast between cinema and other media of the time. Number 5, distinguishing themselves from the rest of the market. Number 6, a double attack on film studios' powers. Number 7, gaining control of the industry. Or number 8, the top movies of Hollywood's golden age, right? So immediately looking at it, you can definitely cross off a few of these options. So the top movies of Hollywood's golden age, again, not that, right? Because the paragraph would have some names of movies and it doesn't have it. What else? What else can we cross off the list? I don't think there is anything related to number 3, contrast between cinema and other media of the time, because they still talk about kind of the same system, right? This Hollywood system. Clearly, they mention companies, right? So it could be maybe number 1, but it says the power within each studio. And as we can see from the last sentence, that in this paragraph, they're presented more as an entity, right? These 8 companies run the entire market, right? So it has to be something about major companies being in control of the entire industry. So what do you guys think about this one? Which of the headings has this idea of being like the basically oligopoly, as it says here, like a monopoly, like held by just a few companies? Okay, I can see option 5 is mentioned as one of the potential answers here. Okay, distinguishing themselves from the rest of the market, right? So if that's your choice, you would have to go for keywords, right? Distinguishing from the rest of the market, right? So distinguishing from the rest of the market. The paragraph does speak about market, but it says that 8 companies operated like together, basically as oligopoly, running the entire market. So they were not distinguishing one another. They were not distinguishing themselves from other companies, right? They basically worked as like the big combination of powers running the whole market. So actually here we have to go for number 7, gaining control of the industry, right? So major studios, as we can find it in the middle of the paragraph, owned vast real estate on which to construct elaborate sets. These studios set the exact terms, right? And we constantly refer to them as like a group, right? 5 studios, the big 5, they own real estate. These studios set the exact terms, right? So all in combination. We do not speak about them sort of one by one, right? We're not defining the differences between them. We talk about how they kind of run the whole picture. So in paragraph C, we have to go for number 7. Number 7. Okay, looking at the next one, right? Paragraph D. Again, same approach. We need to focus on the first and the last sentence of the paragraph. So the beginning. During the golden age, the studios were remarkably consistent and stable enterprises, due in large part to long-term management heads, the infamous movie moguls, who ruled their kingdoms with iron fists. The last sentence. Some have compared the Hollywood studio system to a factory, and it is useful to remember that studios were out to make money first and art second. So during the golden age, studios were remarkably consistent and stable enterprises, due in large part to long-term management heads, the infamous movie moguls, who ruled their kingdoms with iron fists, right? So here they say that there were some management heads, right? Main people at the company who ruled the company with iron fists, right? Very strictly. And in the last sentence, they say, some have compared the Hollywood studio system to a factory, and it is useful to remember that studios were out to make money first and art second. So they were focused on the business part of movie making rather than the artistic expression. So based on these two, which shall we pick here? Which heading do you think fits best? Ruled their kingdoms with iron fists, were set to make money first and art second. So we have what? 5 headings left to pick from. So the power within each studio, contrast between cinema and other media of the time, distinguishing themselves from the rest of the market, a double attack on film studios' power, and the top movies of Hollywood's golden age. Again, nothing related to movies, top movies that is mentioned here. We can see there aren't like names of movies mentioned, so that's definitely not number 8. Again, it's not about contrast between cinema and other media of the time, because they talk about, again, the companies that run the whole market. So with like iron fists, so they were pretty strict. They were large enterprises, large, consistent, and stable. So for paragraph D, I think you would agree with me, heading number 1 fits best, right? The power within each studio. So we are continuing the idea of the previous paragraph. We are expanding on this idea, talking about how they kind of run the market as like these big powers, but this time we focus a bit more on particular studios. So at MGM, Warner Brothers, and Columbia, the same men ran their studios for decades. Studio system hinges on the treatment of stars who were constructed and exploited to suit a studio's image and schedule, right? So we can see how they mention like how each studio had certain powers over their actors, right, and a decision-making process. So it's definitely number 1 here. All right. Okay, now moving on to the next paragraph. Yeah, I did say matching headings is one of the trickiest tasks to complete, so it may be sometimes a bit of a challenge. So at this point, we have 4 headings left, right? So the choice is slimmer, which is good for us, but the approach is still the same. So again, the beginning and the ending of the paragraph. So on the other hand, studios also had to cultivate flexibility in addition to consistent factory output. And the last sentence, 20th Century Fox forged the musical and a great deal of prestige biographies, while Universal specialized in classic horror movies. So studios also had to cultivate flexibility, the beginning of the paragraph says, and the ending says that 20th Century Fox made musicals and biographies, while Universal, a different studio, specialized in horror movies. So which heading do you think depicts this idea? Flexibility and different movie companies producing different types of film. So we have number 3, number 5, number 6, and number 8 left at this point. So which one will it be? All right. So at this point, right, up to this point, we have been talking about the system as a whole, right? How studios sort of created this monopoly, so to speak. They had quite significant power over their employees, right? But in this paragraph, this is where we switch from talking about them as an entity. We now try to show some definition between different studios, right? So this is where we actually go for number 5, distinguishing themselves from the rest of the market, right? In the middle there, they say they had to create product differentiation. Differentiation, that's a synonym to the word distinguishing, right? Examining how each production company tried to differentiate itself has led to loose characterization of individual studios' styles, right? So now they wanted to add some diversity to their work so that they can potentially, outplay maybe their competitors, right? So that's the idea. Now we talk about differences. So 20th Century Fox focused on musicals and biographies, while Universal, for example, specialized on horror films, right? So they try to differentiate, distinguish themselves from other companies, right? So they pick niches, you could say, or genres. So number 8, the top movies of Hollywood's golden age, those would have to be names, guys, right? The top 8 movies. So they have to be names of movies. It can't be just like, genre, because movie is like a particular movie that has a name. Okay, so that's paragraph E. And the last one. So at this point, we have 3 headings left to choose from for this paragraph F, right? So at the beginning of the paragraph, what did they say? In 1948, struggling independent movie producers and exhibitors finally triumphed in their battle against the big studios' monopolistic behavior, right? So, struggling independent movie producers finally triumphed in their battle against the big studios. And the last sentence, hence 1930 and 1948 are generally considered bookends to Hollywood's golden age. So, triumphed in their battle against the big studios. So, independent producers won the battle against the big studios. And those years, 1930 and 1948, were kind of the end of golden age of Hollywood. So which heading closely depicts this idea? All right. Now, clearly, the beginning of the paragraph already gives us like some idea. So, battle against, right? So, there was a battle between independent producers and this monopolistic kind of behavior of big studios. And it says that they triumphed in their battle. So, clearly, it has the idea of some kind of, rivalry between the two parts. So, overall, out of the 3 headings that are left, number 3, number 6, and number 8, the one that fits best would definitely be number 6, right? A double attack on film studios' powers, right? If we look for some kind of more information in the middle of the paragraph, we would land on the penultimate sentence. The studios were ordered to give up their theaters in what is commonly referred to as divestiture, opening the market to smaller producers, right? So smaller producers were trying to kind of, get in the system, trying to monopolize it, basically. So it's number 6, a double attack on film studio powers. And basically number 3 and number 8 are extras. So they're not used at all. These are extra options, distractors that are added to simply make it more difficult for us to find the right answers. So again, as I said, matching headings is rather tricky, right? So definitely need to practice more. It's fine to make mistakes in practice, so don't be afraid of that. But read the first and the last paragraph and the first and the last sentences of the paragraph and try to summarize the idea, right? What it is about in your own words. Don't just focus at this point on keywords in the sentences that you read, because unfortunately, this will lead you to simply pick in the distractor, right? So try to focus on the general idea of these 2 sentences, and this will help you to lead to the right answer. Okay, so let us move on. Let us discuss another rather challenging type of questions, which is true, false, not given, right? So with true, false, not given, actually, it's quite the opposite of matching headings, because this time we will not be focusing on scheming. Instead, we will be focusing on scanning, right? At least to locate the answer in the text. In true, false, not given, you all should remember, again, from the first stage, we are given a list of statements that we need to decide if they agree with the text, disagree or contradict the text, or if they're not mentioned in the text at all, right? So if the statement agrees with the information provided in the text, then we mark it as true. If the statement is false, if the statement contradicts the information, if it says the opposite of what the text is about, we mark it as false. And finally, if we cannot find any information about the statement in the text, or which is more frequent, there are some keywords from the statement in the text, but they do not present the same idea as in the statement, then of course we pick not given. So this is what we'll do now. So quickly with the first one, we are going to revise the step-by-step approach, right? So it is the same text we've been working with for matching headings. So it's about movies, Hollywood, Golden Age. Now, our step-by-step approach is the following. First, of course, we read the statement. You can see the statement here on the bottom. Number 1, after the jazz singer came out, other studios immediately began making movies with synchronized sound. So after the jazz singer came out, other studios immediately began making movies with synchronized sound. So our step-by-step approach is the following. First, we read the statement, which we have just did. Then we focus on the keywords in the statement, right? And this statement in particular is very good because it has a name in it, right? The Jazz Singer, that's the name of the movie, apparently. So it can be a good keyword to use to then scan the text until we find the relevant information. But besides Jazz Singer, we have some other keywords here, right? Studios immediately, right, making movies with sound. Because we know previously, having kind of worked with this text, that they speak about the shift from silent movies to actually sounded movies, right? So Jazz Singer studios immediately began movies with sound. So with these keywords, we need to scan the text and find where they speak about it, and then choose if it's true, false, or not given. So let's do that now. So scan the text to find the information and choose the correct answer. True, false, not given. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. It's totally fine, right? It's better that, let's say, if you write the incorrect answer and then we can discuss it and figure it out rather than you just, keep silent. So try to be active, try to participate. All right, let's see. So as I said, the key anchor sort of keyword that helps us to find the relevant place would be the name of the movie, The Jazz Singer, right? So it immediately leads us to the beginning of the paragraph, right? Where they actually mention it. It's the second sentence. And from there, we can move further, right? So The Jazz Singer was the first to feature synchronized speech, and with it came a period of turmoil for the industry. Studios now had proved that talkies films that are sound kind of with synchronized speech, right, would make them money, but the financial investment this kind of filmmaking would require, from new camera equipment to new projection facilities, made the studios hesitant to invest at first, right? So The Jazz Singer, the first film to feature synchronized speech, provided turmoil for the industry. Studios had proved that such movies made them money, but it made studios hesitant. The investment made studios hesitant to invest at first, right? So they did not invest at first. They hesitated. So the answer here is clearly false, right? It's not true that they immediately began making movies because they weren't sure. All right. Now, for the next one, number 2, there were some drawbacks to recording movie actors' voices in the early 30s, right? So drawbacks to recording actors' voices in the early 30s. Drawbacks recording actors' voices, early 30s. So these are our keywords. So now please scan this paragraph, right? So we continue working with the same paragraph to find the answer. If there were some drawbacks to recording actors' voices, or if there weren't any, or maybe the text doesn't mention it at all. Then we don't read the whole paragraph, the whole text. We just need to scan for the keywords until we find the relevant part of the text, and then we get into it, right? We read it more carefully, but not the entire paragraph. We don't really need that. So 30s, right? It's a good anchor because we can grab onto it and see if it's mentioned in the text. And if we scan for 1930s, right, we will see that it's at the end of the paragraph, right? So we only need that part of it. And again, since it's the text that we have been working with in the previous task, right, we have read bits of it, right? We've read the first and the last sentence of each paragraph. So at this point, it may be already familiar to you. So drawbacks to recording actors' voices in the early 30s, right? Indeed, there were some drawbacks, right? And again, as I kind of was trying to hint before, this is in the last sentence of the paragraph. The camera, had to be encased in a big, clumsy, unmovable soundproof box. In addition, actors struggled having to direct their speech to awkwardly hidden microphones in huge plants, telephones, or even costumes, right? So this one is most definitely true. Because indeed, they had a lot of things to do to manage the movies with speech, with synchronized speech. So that is absolutely true. All right, the next one, number 3. There was intense competition between actors for contracts with the leading studios. So intense competition between actors for contracts with leading studios. Intense competition for contracts with leading studios. So again, these are the keywords. Scan this text, that's paragraph D this time, to find if there's anything related to it. If the text confirms the statement, opposes it maybe, or if it doesn't say anything about it. All right. So with this one, yes, the paragraph does mention actors, right? We again did see that when they talk about how the studios had all the sort of power over actors, right? They could make them do pretty much anything, right? But the text doesn't say anything about competition, right? For contracts between actors, right? To get the contract with the leading studio. So this one will have to go for not given, right? There is no information here. All right, okay. So now let us move on to the next one. So number 4, studios had total control over how their actors were perceived by the public. So studios had total control over how their actors were perceived by the public. So studios control actors perceived by public. All right, so let's have a look at this one. So again, studios control over actors perceived by public, right? So basically we need to find if studios could somehow, right, affect the way actors were viewed by the public. And indeed, we do have a sentence in this paragraph saying, studio bosses could also force bad roles on actors and manipulate every single detail of stars' images with their mammoth in-house publicity departments, right? So they actually could crush an actor, right? If they wanted, trying to force bad roles on them, maybe tarnish their image in the view of the public, right? So it is indeed confirmed in this text. All right. So the problem is with true false not given, the potential issue is that people are not always attentive enough to what true, false, and not given mean, right? So true means that the text confirms the statement, right, fully. False if the text says the opposite of the statement, and not given if we maybe can find some keywords from the statement, but the text doesn't present the same idea. It maybe mentions those keywords in unrelated context to the statement, then it's not given. Or maybe there is no information at all in the text related to the statement. Then again, we'll pick not given. So that's how we deal with this type of task, true, false, not given. All right. Now, let us switch, I feel like, a little bit from reading because it was pretty intense. And let us dive into listening, right? So with listening, again, just like in reading, there are types of questions, there are parts of listening that we have to face during our exam. And there are some skills that we need to learn, right? And we need to operate with completing the tasks. Again, the worst mistake in listening is just going for it without properly analyzing the questions that you will need to answer in this or that part of your exam. So here we are looking at section 1. Today we'll focus on revising that section and a bit maybe of the second one. So it's a typical section 1 situation. We can see a form, it's actually a table, right? That has some gaps in it, which we will need to fill in with the words that we hear on the recording. Now, with a completion task where you have gaps, you should always be attentive and first and foremost focus on the word limit, right? Which is always specified in the task. It says write no more than one word and or a number for each answer. So it's one word plus a number maximum, or maybe it's just a number, right? Nothing else. So having that in mind, you continue and have a look at the form itself. Now, as I said, it is in the form of a table. So hostel accommodation in Darwin. The first column is for name, right? The name of the hostel accommodation. The second column is for price per person, right? For dormitory rooms. And we have one gap in the column of price, right? It's number 3, question number 3. So we can assume it will be a number, clearly, because that's what the price is. And the last column is for comments and reviews. And this is where we have the most of gaps that we need to complete. And this is, again, these are notes, right? So short notes that need to be taken, and we'll need to fill the gaps in those notes. So let's have a look. For the first one, top and backpacker, we have the following comments. Parking available, staff are, a gap, nice pool, air conditioning is 2, and a gap for question number 2. So whenever you need to complete a gap, you need to rely on your ability to predict what part of speech, or sometimes even logically predict what kind of information is missing. So staff are, clearly an adjective is missing there, right? What kind of stuff there is in this accommodation. Air conditioning is too, and again, clearly an adjective is missing here. So in number 3, we have made the prediction already, it's a price. Let's have a look at number 4, right? So good, quiet location, pool and gardens, and then a gap, something, right, in the dormitories. So gap in the dormitory. So clearly here we have a noun missing, right? Because something in the dormitories. All right. Now, the last one is left, Kangaroo Lodge, which is $22. Now the notes are the following. Downtown location. Reception at the lodge is always open. No lockers in the rooms. The gap are very clean, right? So here we can make multiple predictions. And number 6 seems to be a every night. So number 5 is interesting, right? So first of all, before the gap, we have the definite article, the. So it's a noun, clearly. If there is an article, after that, there is a noun, especially since we have one word limit. And after the gap, the verb form is are, right? The verb to be is used in the form are. So that means that the noun in the gap will be plural, because are is the form of plural. So it's a plural noun. So when we listen, we expect to get a plural noun here in relationship to the word clean, which is in the same note. The something, plural, are very clean, right? So clean. And number 6, same story. There is an article a, right? So it's a noun. And since it's an indefinite article, then we understand that the noun missing is singular, right? The noun missing is singular. So based on these predictions, we can actually get to listening, right? So we know what to expect in each of these. We are familiar with the logic of these notes. It's a table, right, where the first one is name, the second is price, and the last one is dedicated to different reviews and comments. And that helps us to pick the information from the recording correctly, right? So we assume that they will cover each of these accommodations one by one. So first they will talk about Top End Backpackers, then Gumtree Lodge, and then Kangaroo Lodge, right? And that's how we kind of keep track of the recording. All right, so now guys, I will play it for you, and you will have to clearly answer the questions that we have on the screen, okay? Just give me a second.
Recording 63.
You will hear a telephone conversation between two friends called Julie and Nick about cheap accommodation in the city of Darwin, Australia. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6.
Hi Nick, it's Julie. Have you managed to find any information about accommodation in Darwin?
Hi, I was just going to call you. I found some on the internet. There are quite a few hostels for backpackers there. The first possibility I found was a hostel called Top End Backpackers.
Okay.
It's pretty cheap. You can get a bed in a dormitory for $19 per person. Private rooms cost a bit more, but we'll be okay in dormitories, won't we?
Sure.
So, That hostel has parking, though that doesn't really matter to us, as we'll be using public transport.
Yeah. Are there any reviews on the website from people who have been there?
Well, yes. They aren't all that good, though. Some people said they didn't like the staff. They had an unfriendly attitude.
That's quite unusual in a hostel. Usually all the staff are really welcoming.
That's what I thought. People said they liked the pool and the fact that the rooms had air conditioning. But the problem with that was that it was very noisy, so they were kept awake. But it was too hot if they turned it off, so they had to put up with it.
Someone told me there's another hostel called Gumtree something.
Gumtree Lodge. It costs a bit more, $45 a person.
What?
Oh, no, that's for private rooms. It's $23.50 for the dorms.
That's more like it.
It looks to be in quite a good location. A bit out of town and quiet, but with
Да, да там. Мне только модерировать потом. Всё. Да. Так, и сделаем. Понятно. Мгм. Потом мне лобстер. Есть лобстер. А вот нашла маленький. Сабзира. Я не знаю, у нас что-то не так, не так просто. Может, есть искусство.
Китайский.
Может быть, тайландская трансуха. Просто какой-то.
Наташа. Моника.
Смотрю, костюм сабзира. Ты хочешь такой костюм какой-то хитро выебанный, при том, что это все стоит дорого. Говорю, я буду модерировать. Модерировать. То есть уже надо какое-то решение принять. Сабзиру можно, надо еще маска. Понятно, все люди. А остальное тоже может обычный шмотки. Там, не знаю, лонгслив какой-нибудь, просто кофта длинная с широкими рукавами. Ну вот, опять-таки, да, как водолазка. Хреновый. Это какой-то не такой совсем. Что тут? Тут все можно сделать. Вот нету. А то, что есть, стоит дохера денег.
Какой череп?
Ну, это тоже какой-то покупной костюм. Coconut water format. Просто легко это решение прими. Я тебя вообще просила, когда в отпуске была.
Просто.
Певца любимые персонажи. Хочется же одеваться в кого-то, кто тебе нравится.
Дмитрий Яндекс звонит.
Алло. Ага, сейчас выйду. Секунду. Ну ты тут хуйню всякую смотришь.
Ой,
Ты знаешь, что можно сделать единственное?
Зачем тебе? Так а что ты?
Ничего, я хочу своим телефоном пользоваться. Ты что-нибудь включить и смотри. Ничего. Спасибо.
You were talking